Okay.
Hello, awesome authors. It is absolutely awesome to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon. I am so excited because I have the beautiful and wonderful Sabrina Hammonds here with me, and we are going to discuss how you can use podcasting as a way to share your message. I know a lot of you are interested in this topic, and I've had some questions because I'm currently doing an author podcast tour with the help of Sabrina, who is really has so much wisdom to share on the topic. And so I just thank you, Sabrina, for being here. It is wonderful to have you. And yeah, I will let you just introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us more about who you are and where you're from. And some of us have seen your beautiful family doing a prize draw in this group. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I am joining from Texas. So I am in the U.S. in Texas. And as you have seen, well, some of you may have seen, so I am married and we have 4 kiddos, 3 still live at home. I run the Business from Home Kingdom Connections podcast and media agency. Interesting fact, up until a few years ago, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And so I just stumbled upon podcasting because I absolutely love people's stories, their testimonies, their messages. And come to find out, podcasts are a great way to get your message out there.
Yeah.
And so it all started with a testimony and then a Google search, believe it or not.
Wow, that's so awesome. That's one thing I really love about you. And the first time I connected with you was seeing your passion for other people's stories and your passion for helping people get their messages out there. And just as an author, I know that that's one of the challenges that many of us face is we write the book, we publish the book, and then it's kind of, now what do we do with this book baby that we've been trusted with, this message that we
Yeah.
are called to steward. So I love that that's your passion. And that was actually one of my questions is how did you start your journey with podcasting? And what is your why? You know, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, and it all started with somebody else's testimony. She didn't have a book, but
Wow.
she was my first client that I had for podcasting. And I was serving her in like a VA type role, like a virtual assistant online. And we just got to know one another as friends and not just as, working together. And as I learned more about her testimony, it really impacted my life in such a huge, huge way that I said, this is really powerful, like what you've shared with me. And I just basically told her like how it affected me, how it impacted me. And I said, I think more believers, more Christians need to hear your testimony. Like you need to be speaking to people all over. And she just came back and said, well, yeah, the Lord's already told me I'm supposed to be speaking. And I was like, well, can I help you with that? And then right after I said it, I was like, what did I just offer to do? I have no idea what that even means, and I think it was just the Lord gently leading me to where I was going to end up because I wasn't looking for whatever it was we were going to be doing. I was just serving her like as an administrative type assistant. And right after I said it, I immediately in my head said, like, Lord, what did I just offer to do for her? I have no idea what I'm doing. And it was like, I just felt this peace, like, it's okay. We're going to figure this out together. And so I just started researching. I was like, where are people sharing their message? Where are people speaking? And that's when I found podcasts. And so I know the power of somebody else's story, the power of somebody else's message. And oftentimes we don't realize that what God has done in our life, or whatever he's called us to do, like just what an impact that can have on somebody else. And I think we just discount ourselves, or we're just like, I'm just whatever, right? This is just, ugh. And it's like, you don't realize that is gold to somebody else.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just kind of taken me off track a little bit with what I had planned, but just the fact that you mentioned that, like, I think for a lot of authors is we publish the book, and I know for myself, I didn't expect that there was going to be actually a lot of work getting that message out there. It doesn't just, your book doesn't just fly off the shelf only because it's available. People don't necessarily know that you have this treasure in you. So then when you don't see the book sell, you can kind of question whether what you have is really valuable. So I know that was a big struggle for me and a big wrestle for me. And I needed a bit of breakthrough. And I feel like, connecting with you and with a lot of the people that you are connected with, it's restored that sense of value of what I carry.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for that. It really did. You really did help me see that what I actually have is worth stewarding. It's worth sharing. So it's been a huge blessing for me to connect with you and this call of God on your life to help people.
That blesses me to hear that,
because
it is about stewarding the message.
Yeah.
And if you're not stewarding the message, then that's exactly, I feel like, what happens, because you're like, I've done all of this work. And again, there's still a lot that I'm learning about authors and things that I didn't realize that you put all that work in, and then all of a sudden it's here, and there's such excitement and elation for what has come from this, and you cannot wait to get it into the hands of people. And then all of a sudden you hit the button, right? And it's published and it's out there. And then it's like, you just wait. And I thought, in my mind, that's about all that you have to do, right? Like, you just hit publish.
Yeah.
And somehow it magically makes its way in front of all the people and it doesn't work that way. And you watch and you see, and you're seeing, like, the numbers are not, like, you're not selling. And you're just like, okay, I did what I was supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
But it's that stewarding the message.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that there are people who are called to help us with that process, it's a huge relief. Like, the fact that I wasn't on my own, like I didn't feel on my own anymore in that process, that was huge for me. So
yeah, we're not called to do it on our own.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah. Awesome. So you started the Kingdom Connections podcast and media agency. And you've got a podcast of your own, which I would highly recommend, and we'll pop a link in here as well. I love the awesome messages that you share, because you're such an encourager as well of people, not being scared to put themselves out there and sharing their voice and sharing their message. But tell us a little bit more about the Kingdom Connections podcast and media agency. When did you start it? How did it come about? And what's the aim behind the organization or business?
Yeah. So I shared a little bit about just how I got started. It was just something I stumbled into. I had no idea what I was doing at first. And this was back in 2020, when I officially launched the business. It was in the summer of 2020. And so I started out with just those administrative type skills, serving people. And then the Lord led me to help people get on podcasts. And so from that one client that I really didn't know what I was doing, we were just kind of working together. I asked her, could I just practice on you, basically, like, understand, this is something I'm learning, like, can we just do this together? And she agreed. And so I started doing that for her. And then she had shared it with a friend of hers. And she basically just said, hey, Sabrina's doing this, for me, she's getting me on podcasts. And so her friend came to me and was like, can I pay you to do this for me too? And I was like, well, yes, but I'm still learning and I don't exactly know what I'm doing. And so just understand that, like, I was still very just not confident, at all, because I was so new. But she just graciously said, yeah, like, let's do this together. And so then she shared it with some of her friends. And so before I knew it, I had, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 clients at one time.
Amazing.
And I was just like, Lord, what am I doing here? I still, and it was just, God was just so gracious. He just brought the people, and I would just pray and ask him, like, okay, God. But it was so interesting, like all the people that would come, like I would be so invested in their message because I'm like, wow, look at what you're doing in the lives of these people. And they didn't even, some of them don't even know, right? Like, you don't even know the value that you carry. But it's like God allowed me to see into their message, like to see the value, and then to tell them, hey, like, this is incredible. And I love to help people get their messages out there. And so some of my clients are coaches, coach coaches, authors, speakers, sometimes all of the above. And really they're just looking for that next step. Like, I've done what I feel like I'm supposed to do, and now what? Like, now how do I really get this message out to my people? And so that's where we come in. And it's not just about a one like a blueprint for everybody. It's really asking the Lord about them and like their message. God, what do you say about them? Because ultimately he has the plan.
Yes.
We have the basic blueprints of, like, I know how to pitch people on podcasts and how to book them, but I want to make sure that I know, what does God say about them and their message, because that's where the real connections take place, because God already knows you and your
Yeah.
message and where you need to be. And you have to
Wow.
trust that. You have to trust that.
Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. Wow. I think that is just like the what it means to really be seen in that
Yeah.
process, for someone to really recognize the value and to move in alignment with who God says you are. That is powerful, powerful stuff. So you have the author podcast program, or you do this kind of special podcast strategy for authors specifically, and I know it's something quite new to you.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what that looks like?
Yeah. So I will tell you that in the last year or so is when God started really reminding me, hey, I'm going to send you some authors. You are really going to be focusing on serving authors. And at the time, I really was just serving coaches, entrepreneurs. Some of them have written a book, but it wasn't the focus. And so this year in particular, that's exactly what started happening. And so as authors started coming to me, I was like, okay, Lord, like, what is the strategy for them in particular? And I felt like that's where the author podcast tour came in. Like, I literally was sitting with the Lord, walking around outside, and I was just asking him, like, what does this look like? And I saw this map in my head, like literally the map. And I was like, it's a tour. They're going to go on tour. It's a podcast tour. And so seriously, God just dropped the idea, and I saw it so beautifully. And what the idea behind it is that, you've already done so much work. Like, you've already put so much time, and all you want to do now is share your message. And so that's the idea behind the tour. We want to just take your information. We want to take your message, take the areas that you can speak on, and basically give you these places where you can go and speak. So the way that I see it is a very seamless process. There's not really a lot of work that you have to put in. Like, you have put in the work. The message is inside of you. Now you have to be confident in what God has given you, and know that you have such value. And then the other part to that is putting together the speaker sheet, or the one sheet as I call it, so that your bio is there, your headshot, your speaking topics. So we put all of that together for you in an organized way, so that basically we just get to deliver you the tour. Like, these are the places that you're going to be speaking. And so God has also been saying that we need to partner with podcasts. And so not just send you on the podcast, but we're working on some partnerships as well. So that, like, for example, you were on the Living the Next Chapter. And so that's a podcast that I really want to be able to partner with because they're serving authors. And so the difference between just the pitching and the partnership is relationship. Like, I know them, they know us, they know we're going to send them wonderful authors, and then we can trust them with our people. So that's another piece to that tour that we're working on, is just partnerships with podcasts as well, so that you trust where you're going and who you're connecting with. We have already established that relationship with them.
That's awesome. That sounds amazing. And I've loved actually being on that podcast with David Campbell. It was such a lovely experience, because it can be quite nerve-wracking when you go and do a podcast if you're not used to being a guest or being interviewed.
Yeah.
And they were just wonderful and making me feel relaxed and able to focus on the conversation, which is amazing. So what advice do you have for authors who are new to podcasting? So if they wanted to be a guest on a podcast, what advice would you have for them?
So I think the first thing is, I am going to share that template with your people here in the group so that they can see your one sheet. And I would recommend to start by getting your own information organized. Like, for example, do you have a headshot? And it doesn't even have to be the professional headshots that you've had taken, like by a branding expert or anything like that. My first 2.5 years, I literally used a shot that was taken in our backyard. And I had my son like doctor it up to make it look professional. I used that same headshot for like 2.5 years. So anyway, some kind of semi-professional headshot, your bio, which normally as you're working on your book, you're creating that bio as well. And so just organizing that information ahead of time is going to really help you as you are thinking about where you want to speak, who you want to speak to. It's a place that you can reference to know, hey, these are the things that I can talk about. These are the things that I'm passionate about sharing. And when you share that with somebody, it puts everything into one place. And so I'm going to share that resource. And I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, awesome. And we've also talked a little bit about using podcasting for launching a book. Would that be a good strategy for kind of launching and getting your message out there?
So I think it does depend on the content of the books that you write. So for example, if you wanted to start a podcast and you are a children's book author, I don't necessarily recommend like starting a podcast and a launch at the same time, because I do feel like that would be a big undertaking. But I think the one resource that's very, I think that is untapped is your own community, and utilizing the people in your own community to help you launch the book. But as far as getting on podcast as a way to launch, I think is a really great strategy.
Right.
You get people involved. You make those other connections. And so now it's not just me, one person sharing my message. It's you and this community of people that's helping you to further that message.
Awesome. So if somebody has their book out and they've had it out for a while and they're thinking about starting their own podcast based around their book or about based around the message that they carry, what advice do you have for them?
So I think there are a few things that you really need to think about. And number one, so what is the message that you want to share? Like, what do you want to say if you wanting to start a podcast? And then the second thing is, who are you wanting to speak to? Because I feel like a lot of times we're so broad, like I just want to share with everybody. I just want to speak to everybody, but then you're not targeting anybody.
That's
and
right.
so I think it's really important to know, what is the message you want to share and who do you want to speak to? And then I think the third thing that is really powerful when it comes to a podcast is those interviews, like being able to make connections by bringing other people onto your podcast. And nothing against people that do solo podcasts at all. But I think if you're wanting to grow your community, you're wanting to grow your connections, inviting somebody onto your podcast, and then maybe you end up being on their podcast or their platform. It's just a great way for us to support one another.
Yeah. A couple of things that I just want to highlight, and there's a little note that I made that I just want to mention as well. But that's one of the things when it comes to writing a book as well that we talk about often. It's knowing who you are for, who you are called to reach.
Yeah.
And it's such a
Yeah.
powerful thing that happens when we've got such a clear picture of that person who we are speaking to. It makes our writing more clear. It helps with your marketing. It's just so important that you aim for the one. And we talk about the 99, that Jesus left the 99 to reach the one. And it's that same kind of spirit of really seeing that one person that you are called to reach. And the more we focus on the one, it's actually interesting how we actually end up reaching more people than we can imagine.
Yeah, that's so true. But then also sometimes if you're not, you do focus on that one and you end up having such a clear message. But then what you find sometimes is the more that you get that message out there, sometimes it maybe changes a little bit, or maybe you see a different audience or a broader audience that you didn't see before. But like sometimes I feel like that develops the more that you share. I connected with a lady that had published a book and it was for moms specifically. But then she decided she wanted to start a podcast, and she realized that her book is not just for moms, even though that's her target audience. She realized it's for women, like it's applicable to all women.
Yeah.
But she started with what she believed and who she was speaking to. But then I think it's okay to give yourself permission. Like, you know what? I actually think this is for more people than I realized, but that develops the more that you share and the more that you show up, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got some interesting stories as well of people that I never expected would read my book, and then they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I just want to draw from everything we've discussed is, that it's okay to ask for help, that we don't have to be on this journey alone, that we can draw on our community and the people that we connect with. And that podcasting really is a great way of building connection and actually growing your audience and getting exposure for the message that you carry.
Yeah. And I think a great way to practice too, as you're just, maybe you're not quite ready, but you do have this message, and, maybe you're in the journey. Maybe your book isn't published yet, but I would encourage people to reach out to the ones that they know. Maybe your fellow authors, you're on this journey together, and maybe you have a conversation and you go live on whatever space that you're active in, and you have a conversation about your messages, about the journey of being an author. And then you share it on your page, they share it with their audience. And it's a great, it's just have a natural conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be this complicated thing. It can just be like what we're doing right here. Because I think I want to be able to share our conversation with other people too, because I'm connected to other authors that you're not connected to, so I feel like that's how we serve one another, and that's how we help each other. And so one of my authors, she had this really great idea to interview her fellow authors, to interview her publisher, to I forget, there were several different connections that she had because of her own author journey, and she interviewed those people, and they had a conversation about each other's journeys and like their publishing and how all that worked out, and then they shared it on each other's pages with each other. And I just thought that was such a brilliant idea, because you're elevating each other, and it was just such a really neat idea. And so I felt like that's a great way for people to get started if you're not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all the authors that are watching in this group, there's an opportunity for you to come on in the group and come and share in this space with us and get, starts. Just try it out, see how it goes. This isn't a particularly big group, so it's a safe place to get started. And yeah,
I
so I'd
love that
love
you
to
do
hear
that.
from you, any author, or if you're in the process of writing, you want to share more about your message. You'll notice as well that there has been quite a few conversations happening in this group with different people in the author experience. And last week we spoke to Shirley, who's an editor and could give us the perspective of an editor. And so it's great. It's a great way of sharing where we're up to, what you've learned, because we all have something really valuable to share. Doesn't matter where you are in the journey, whether you've published your book or you're still in process of writing, you will have some treasure that we all can benefit from. So
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
let me know if you want to participate. It'd be awesome to have you. So, Sabrina, if people want to connect with you personally, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'll put the links in the comments. But there's our website, kcpodcastagency.com. There's also Kingdom Connections podcast group. So within that group, it's where I post the episodes for the Kingdom Connections podcast, but also all things podcasting. We just did a 2-part series with Susan about honor. And so we've talked about how to honor one another. But it's a community, just like this is a community. So with like a twofold. So it's the podcast and it's also all things podcasting in there. And yeah, and just me personally, just connecting and reaching out to me personally. Because I would love to just encourage you wherever you are in the journey. That like you're capable, you can do this, and not only that, but you should.
Yes.
Because what you have to share is so valuable. And we need one another, right? I feel like we need to kind of I see us like pulling each other along, like we need community.
Yeah.
And so if I can be that for you, just reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, and you have been for me, and it's been awesome. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom with us today. And thank you everybody for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you want to connect with Sabrina,
Yes.
the links will be in the comments. It's been lovely having you, Sabrina. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Melissa.
Bye.